Oh, yes, yeah,
Well, you
outside.
didn't eat lunch yet, you know.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
Where are
Better
you gonna
for
go
me.
eat lunch yet?
Nah. I was gonna go up and get a hamburger here.
Okay. Well, we're now talking with Eddie Sylvester, and I'm gonna ask you pretty much the same questions about where you grew up and when.
Well, I was born in the same hospital as my brother was, and we went to the same elementary school. And I went to San Luis.
Let me stop for a second.
Yeah.
We might want to use your interview apart from his.
It's all right.
So when you're telling the same, it doesn't tell us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
okay,
you.
okay, fine.
Yeah, it's hard for you because you've been listening to all of this. So you know. Yeah, you already heard about that. So you got to kind of say it again.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Well,
just start over.
okay. I was born in Mountain View Hospital in San Luis Obispo, and now it's offices.
What year, Eddie?
1943. And then I was raised in Avila Beach, and we went and we lived there, and I went to the same Avila school there. I went through from 1 through 6th grade, 2-room school, 1 to 3 and 4 to 6. And then on my 7th year, we went to San Luis Obispo High, and or junior high. They call it middle school now. And then, and that was in about 1957. The family moved from Avila Beach to Shell Beach. I think that's about the time it was, 57. Well, then I got thrown back in elementary school in Pismo.
Yeah.
Because that school went from kindergarten to 8th grade. And I had 8.5. Now that was a big blow to my ego.
Oh my.
And I think that's where I learned how to really. I'd never liked school a whole lot, but that made me like school a whole lot less. The kids today, they have their choice of where they want to go to high school. Well, back then we didn't have choices. They told us where we were going to school, and there was no liking or disliking about it. You did it. Because I tried to go against the grain, and all it done was got me in a lot of trouble.
Did they have a school bus that took you to high school, or did
Yes.
they did?
Yeah, we had to catch a school bus that took us to Arroyo Grande. But the elementary school, we did have a school bus that took us to Pismo, from Shell Beach to Pismo.
Well, that was quite a distance back then because it was on old Highway 1.
Yeah, it was.
Not quite as fast as it'd be.
No, it wasn't. No. Took us about, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes to get to school. And the Rio Grande High was out in the middle of Walnut Orchard and celery orchard fields. And now it's in the middle of a bunch of homes. So, but how would you call it now? My school, what do you call it? My school years were very short there.
So
I ended up quitting.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Quit high school?
I quit in the end of my sophomore year.
And what'd you do then?
Well, I had big plans on what I was going to do. Sounded real good at the time until my dad got a hold of it. I was 16 and a half at the time. Well, I figured, you know, at the end of May and summer's coming on, you know, it'd be real nice, you know, to try to take a summer off because I've always worked summers prior to that on the tugboats. And so my dad asked me what I was going to do, and I just told him. I should have suggested to him, but I told him that I figured I was going to take the summer off, and then after summer, I was going to go out and find a job. And he says, not around this house, you mean? He says, you got two choices. I have an opening in Los Angeles working on the tugs, or get out. Simple as that. So I took the first choice. I went to work, and I forgot about the summer vacation. And then I worked in Los Angeles on the tugboats for 6 years, and then I come down with. In that 6 years, I bought in a boat for fishing to get back into the fishing business. And then along about 66, I got rheumatic fever, so I had to take off work from there. And then someplace along through there, I had a little boat at the same time, but I went and I would go back on the ships after I got out of got well from the rheumatic fever. I'd go back to fishing and tugs. I'd do both.
Where were the tugs at that time?
The tugs were in Estero Bay and El Segundo, Los Angeles.
Supporting oil.
Supporting
industry.
Supporting the oil industry, and well, it was actually out of El Segundo there, and we kept the tugs in Redondo Beach, and then we lived in Hermosa Beach, and Manhattan was right next to El Segundo, and that's where the oil refinery was. And it was the same kind of work that the Estero Bay tugs done.
Well, the little beach towns then were kind of like Avila, weren't they?
Yeah, but just a little faster living. And
so you mentioned fishing down there. What did you fish for?
well, down there I didn't fish. I'd come home.
Oh, you come
See, I did not like the area that I was working at, so we were on 6 days on, 3 days off, and on my 3 days off I would drive back home.
Oh, okay.
And I did own a boat at that time. I purchased in about 64, I think. And I would take the summer. My dad would let me take summers off and let my younger brother go to work in my place. And when I was off fishing. And then during the winter, I would go back to work on the tugs. I'd tie the boat up, go back to work on the tugs.
So when did you start fishing full time?
I started fishing full time. It was, I'm trying to think, I went to, in 19, I'm trying to think, I went through, I was ill in 1966, and I got married in 1966, and in the 60s, the latter part of the 60s, a lot of things happened, and then I ended up in Alaska in 1973 or 73. I ended up in Alaska, and we fished up there. And then I come back from Alaska, and then that's when I really started fishing full time, was when I come back from Alaska. And I was in Alaska, I was there for the salmon and the albacore off of Canada, and then we went back to Alaska for herring. And then I got off the boat in midwinter. in December. And then I started running a boat down here for dragging in 74. And it was like an 80, it was like an 80-foot boat. And then we were running out of here. It was called the Sea Run. And I ran that for, I had a 6-month contract on that, and I ran it, and then the owner wanted it back after we got it working. The owner bought it and he didn't know which end was up on it, and then after we got it making money, then he wanted it back in 3 months, so I give it back to him. Of course, what it took to get it fishing, he didn't get it back in that. He got it all back piled up in a pile like I received it. So, and then I purchased, after that I purchased a small Kettenberg, and then I fished halibut, gill nets. And that was Carolyn B. And then we went and I fished the Carolyn B for halibut for I think it was 13, 14 years. And then I sold it because we fished halibut and we fished sharks and swordfish. And then how things, you always think bigger is a little bit better. Well, we made things a little bit bigger and a little bit better, and we almost lost everything out there, about 100 miles offshore. So immediately when I got in off of that trip, we went and we bought the Rena Bell. We jumped from 38 foot to about 50 foot real quick. And then for the rest of that year, my offshore drifting ended until we got the Rena Bell ready.
Had a real boat.
Had a real boat.
Tell them how many boats of that size of yours make have lost in those years.
Well, in 5 years, probably 25 or 30 boats my size had been turned over.
Is that right? 38.
Yeah,
40
38 to 40 foot. And some of them 45 foot.
And they were drift netting for
Drift netting.
shark and swordfish?
Shark and swordfish.
Just too small a boat?
We started out with the small nets, and then the government come in, and there was a lot of boats that got permits. The small boats that started the fishery, we were maxed out with the gear that we developed, and we could go through any place, anytime, anywhere. Well, all of a sudden, the government and a lot of money from San Diego come into play. The guys with the bigger boats built great big boats, and then we were using like 3,000 foot nets, and they got it jacked up to like 9,000 foot nets. And so us to stay in competition with them, we tried to go to like 1,000 foot nets. Well, our boats were too small, and a lot of us turned the boats over.
You mean 1 mile?
1 mile a year, 6,000 feet, a nautical mile.
Which is a standard today.
Which is a standard of today. They brought down the half a mile part of it. So now the standard today is 1 mile or 1 nautical mile, which is 6,000 feet.
But more than 24 boats were lost during that period?
Possibly more than 2,000, in a 5-year period of this issue. It did thin the fleet out.
Well, yeah.
And thinning out a lot of lives too, a lot of fishermen. And but that's part
But
of
you survived your particular incident.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Well, I had an old iron reel on the boat, that was 4 foot high, 5 foot wide. So we built an aluminum reel, which was half the weight of the iron reel. So we went 6 foot high sides and 5 foot width. Well, the amount of the weight and net combined that I added to it was equal about the same, but the height off the deck was, instead of 2 feet off the deck, it was like 3 feet off the deck. And that other foot with the higher, with that extra 2 feet of a foot and a half of height, was more leverage than what the boat could handle.
Raise the
And
center
then-
of gravity.
Then we got offshore, and we got in a bad blow. So normally when we'd get in a real bad blow with the other net, we could just run in the trough and come home and not even worry about it. The boat was underwater, just no problem. Well, to come home, the boat was too far underwater. It held too much water on deck, and with the top center of gravity. So I tried to turn and run before it, and still with that, just the extra weight, because the net was wet.
Yeah.
Dry weight is one thing, wet weight is another. And then, like running before it, we'd just run down the islands maybe 75, 80 miles. Well, the problem with that was the stern on that little boat was like 32 inches high, and that's how far underwater the deck was 32 inches underwater. Because you would walk back on the stern and everything was just underwater back there. So that wasn't no good. That was a real losing proposition. So we turned around, and the only way we could make headway dry was we were down off the Rodriguez Dome, and we had to head for like to the west, and that was just getting you further and further offshore. But the further north we got, the smoother it got. And we got up off of Cape San Martin. And by that time we got off of Cape San Martin, the weather had subsided enough to where we could turn around and start running before it, but headed back in towards land. And then about San Simeon, then I could run directly before it. The weather had subsided enough. But we had to go way offshore to do it. And it was all real slow, you know, we couldn't, and it was just something scary all the way. It made you look at your, you had hours and hours to think about how to correct your problem. And we had too much water on deck to take some of the net off and put it down below. And it was just, I mean, it was just, you're caught with your pants down. And that was it. So you don't try to get in those predicaments anymore. And that's...
But you got in?
Oh yeah, we got in all right. We brought the boat home, we got the net home, we got everything home.
You reconfigured your...
Yeah, I went right down and I made an offer on the boat. I think 2 days later, as the money transferred hands, and I owned a new boat.
That's the way you fixed it.
Yeah, we fixed the problem, and I didn't go fishing anymore that year.
Scare the pants off you.
Yeah. So,
But the Reno, that was a very nice boat.
yeah, it was a real nice boat. In fact, it earned me a real good living until we had an bout with a pneumonia. Between the pneumonia and the National Marine Fisheries, their closures, they cut us down on quota enough to where the boat was a 3-man boat, but the quotas were cut down enough to where it didn't really pay for 3 men. It only paid for 2 men on the boat. Well, having pneumonia, I lost the use of half the lung, so I was only like a half a man.
Yeah.
So it put all the work on the crewman, which wasn't fair, and I was afraid if someone could get hurt real easy, the person working for me. So, and it really wasn't enough, it wasn't fair to take 2 men because there was another person there was 2 people then that wasn't going to make a good living. So I just got out of the business.
And where's the boat now?
The Ring a Bell is still here in Morro Bay. It's tied up down outside of the old Beacon dock, the old Beacon fuel dock. It's tied up there. It's still black and white.
Is it being fished?
No, it's just being used as a I guess as a motel.
Wow.
The man who bought it is from the valley, and he brings his family over, and he lives on the boat. Just uses it for a weekend house, and he does take it out once in a great while.
Does that kind of break your heart to have that happen, or what? How do you feel about it?
Well, I really don't give it much thought. I just kind of turned my back on it and walked away, and I don't try to fret on it.
But it's a shame to see a nice piece of equipment like that being used for what it's designed for.
Well, what I really bought the boat for was for the inshore. Well, I bought it for the dragging, and then we got in on the inshore experimental fishery. The boat was a Rolls Royce for that.
This is for the small-scale halibut.
For the small-scale halibut inshore fishery.
Can you explain a little bit about that experiment?
Well, it's when they wanted to get rid of gill netting, and they did get rid of gill netting inside of 15 fathoms. Well, the fishermen wanted, and the fishing game wanted to try an alternative fishery to try to find a better way of catching halibut without using gill nets, and not catch birds and not catch mammals, such as sea otters, sea lions, and porpoise. So there was, I think, 7 of us that got permits, and we rigged our boats to go and try to catch halibut, but we used all 7.5-inch gear.
That's the mesh size.
The mesh size of throughout the whole net was 7.5 mesh, 7.5-inch mesh, which our California size is 4 3/4 mesh outside 3 miles. Well, I put in for it, and we rigged the boat for it, and we went out, and I thought it was awful big gear myself. And the first day that we got, I think, 1 or 2 tows, we had 1 or 2 fish. And we just kept getting 1 or 2 fish, and then pretty soon we kept working with the gear and not really being a dragger and not really knowing, just talking to people and trying to use our just common horse sense. We did get the gear to fishing, and we were getting like 50 fish a day, which is the same as the gill netters. The gill netters were pushed out to 15 fathoms at the time, and we were fishing like from 7.5 fathoms. which is like 42, it would be like 47 feet out. And we were getting, our catches of from 20 to 40 fish a day, which we were doing with gill nets inside. We were doing fine. And then I was lucky enough to get my gear tuned in, so we were getting the first 100 fish day I went for. I got excited. I was shooting for the 100. I could see we could make the 100. And I ended up wrapped up in a reel.
Oh, you did. Oh, no. That's not good.
Wrapped up. Lucky.
Yeah.
All I got out of it was a broken arm. And my crewman stopped it, backed me out of it.
Darn lucky.
And I mean, it could have been Squash City real easy if it had got the second wrap on me. So
you made one revolution of the...
one revolution, yeah, one revolution. So we come in, we finished pulling the net. We made 100 fish though.
Yeah. You had to pay for that broken arm somehow.
Yeah. And we got tied up, and then I had the fish buyer take me to the hospital to reset my arm. So I was off, and then after that incident, I got smarter. Then I hired another man instead of being two men. And it got to where we got better and better and better at it. And then we got too good at it. And then the people started complaining at our production. I tried to cut down. They give us too many hours to fish, so I cut down on my own the amount of hours that we could fish. And I tried to get them to cut down the size of gear because we were too efficient. If I was a nobody and I could figure this out on the efficiency basis, I went to the Fish and Game to try to get our hours cut down, our efficiency, the size of nets cut down and stuff, because we were getting like twice the amount of what we should have been getting. And Fish and Game would not have nothing to do with it because we were on an experimental fishery.
But isn't that the point of an experiment? Is so that you can make adjustments?
Well, this is what I tried to put a smaller net on the boat, and I almost lost my permit over it. The Fish and Game told me to get because I took a small boat's net. I wanted to prove that we could fish profitably with a smaller net and smaller doors. And I put everything on the boat, and then the Fish and Game threatened to take my permit away from me for doing this other experiment on my own.
Was it because you were skewing their data by doing that? They were trying to replicate their experiments?
Well, I always thought an experiment was so you can experiment with anything. I guess I would have been messing in their sandbox.
So there's a methodology where you try and replicate, you do the same experiment over and over again and come to a conclusion.
Yeah, well, the thing of it, our conclusions was getting better and better, and I mean, when you're getting up to 500-600 fish a day, it's time to, and you're doing it day after day, week after week, and and here's people really working harder than you are, putting more hours in it than you are, working for a lot less than you are.
You can kind of see the writing on the wall.
You can see the writing on the wall. And then when the people start screaming, you can't really blame them.
So what was the conclusion of these experiments?
Well, the conclusion of the experiment was we tried it for smaller gear. So we got smaller doors, went to smaller doors and smaller gear, and I could still, I toned everything down to where we were still getting 100 fish a day, which 100 fish a day was a good day due to the fact of the fuel that we were using extra, the equipment that we were using extra, the actual dollar amount for which you were getting extra was more equal to it. You know, we weren't making like the 500-600 fish a day, which I had a lot of days of 500 fish, 400 fish. This brought it down within reason to where more people could fish that fishery and still not hurt the fishery. That's what we were after, is try to not hurt the fishery, but yet get more permits in. And then there was enough pressure of outside people to where they, with the smaller gear, they finally ended up shutting the whole fishery down, even though we did not catch one sea otter, we did not catch a bird, we did not catch a porpoise, but yet we could turn in all this production. And in the Fish and Game's eyes, they wanted this to fail, because we went out and we got loans that the Fish and Game backed us on for the gear, and the Fish and Game co-signed the loans. And I can't remember, it was a Coastal Conservancy where the money come from. Coastal Conservancy was real dubious of giving us the money. In 6 months' time, we were all of us from San Francisco down to Morro Bay, Avila. We were like 3 to 4 months ahead on, or 3 or 4 payments ahead of schedule. And they thought it was all going to be bad loans, and they were happier than heck that they got the loans because they were all good loans. And I was talking to the loan manager about it, but Schultz, who was the head person of Fish and Game, he was really disgusted when this man from the Coastal Conservancy told him he had all good loans. There was no bad loans. The man got real upset. So it just comes to tell me that he wanted the fishery to fail. He did not want it to go forward. Well,
so that ended.
That ended, and so so now the gill netters got pushed from 90 feet of water out to 30 fathoms, which is 180 feet of water, because they were catching the sea, once in a while they'd catch an incidental sea otter or a porpoise or sea lion. So they got pushed out further. We had a clean fishery and we got eliminated. And that was the end of the story. And the fact was that we didn't even get our 5-year experiment like we were supposed to.
Well, it's kind of the end of the story, because the whole thing is back now, where there's guys that would like to get those inshore trawl permits again. And you have at least that data set from your experiment that demonstrates it's possible and it's viable.
It's possible. It's a good, clean fishery. But the people that are making law, they have something else on their agenda, and it's not letting the fishermen fish. It's not letting the fishermen turn in a product without a they don't want to see any fishermen out there. Even though if it's a clean fishery, they still don't want to see them there, because this is something that they got from college, from becoming a biologist. Every biologist has something that they're going to specialize in, and they don't care whose toes they step on. but they're going to get their special little interest thing through. And since they're working for the state, they have the power. And this is what we're fighting. We're not fighting common horse sense. We're fighting a college sense. And a college sense isn't for making a living. It's for getting your own little niche through. It's a hard one to figure out, but anyway, getting back to the Rena Bell, when we went from the inshore fishery to the offshore fishery, I went from a Rolls Royce to a Volkswagen.
Yeah.
Now, if the inshore fishery showed up again, you would put the boat back into it. Well, then you would have a Rolls Royce.
Rolls-Royce again. You have a way with words that it's been called Sylvesterisms. Are you familiar with that term?
No.
No, not really.
No, I think they're great. So now you're retired,
I'm retired, semi,
semi-retired.
but I'm thinking of getting real stupid again,
Yeah, and do what?
and we're building up a little drag boat.
Yeah.
But I'm doing it for something that a lot of people don't understand.
Uh-huh.
I love to rebuild things,
Yeah.
and I'm hoping in the back of my mind that this inshore fishery will come back in. I would just dearly love to do it, but I don't think I can do it. It wouldn't be right for me to do it because I am retired, even though I hold the permits going back into it. I feel the people that ought to be really, truly, what do you call it? The righteous people to be able to get this permit would be the people that are being pushed out right now, that are fishing. Just like both of my brothers and a lot of the other boats here that are fishing every day. They're putting in their time. Now, them are the people that really should be able to get the permit. My younger brother and I are in partners with this boat. I don't mind setting that boat up. Now, he's the one that has to fish it. Hey, knock himself out doing it. I don't really care. What I'm really wanting to do is just to have something to do. Build the gear and whatever. I don't mind doing that. And if he wanted me to fish with him or something, I could fish with him and show him what little bit I know, and you can't put much, I don't know that much, but it's just something I enjoy doing. Probably,
Well, there's a lot of people that can't fish. You're their source to the product, other than importing it from some other country.
some other country.
Yeah.
No, it's a real big shame. I would really like to see the government at this time, like our farm fish coming in, put a tariff on the fish, like the fishermen set a price. A tariff goes on that amount per pound to equal the wild fish.
Yeah.
And while they're paying that tariff, the government is getting the money.
And what would they do with it?
They could do anything they wanted with it. I really wouldn't care.
Yeah.
Someone could get raises. They could give it to Social Security.
As long as they stay off your back.
As long as they stayed off of my back. The halibut coming out of Mexico, hey, put a tariff on that fish to where it's equal to where the American fisherman can be able to put that product on the market and know that other product is being, if they're going to use that other product, they're going to, whichever product they buy, they're going to be paying the same for it.
Well, they've done that for Harley Davidson and motor cars, and why shouldn't they do that for American fishermen
And farmers,
and farmers?
I mean, it's kind of a one-way thing, it's the way it's set up.
Yeah.
probably, if you really go back, the people that are making the laws, they probably have a little chunk of the action that's over in these foreign countries. That's the reason why it's not passed.
You have a wonderful saying about a mashed cat. Could you, for the record, give us that saying just for my own personal collection? You know what I mean?
I'm not. That one there has kind of got me.
Maybe you just make these things up.
I don't know.
No, I recall you had a hearing saying something to a bureaucrat about screaming louder than a mashed cat.
Oh, screaming just.
I always loved that one.
Well, when you mash a cat, it screams. Get your attention.
First time I heard that, I just went, yeah, it says it all.
I don't know. It's just things come into me just as whatever sounds good at the time.
Yeah, well, that's pretty original. I never heard anywhere else.
Well, it's just like kicking the can, you know.
Yeah. Anything else you want to add to this?
Well, I don't know. I'm just retired now, just being a Morro Bay right, I guess. I'm just.
Is it true that there's a secret submarine base hidden under Morro Rock?
Well, I'll tell you.
You probably heard that one.
You know what's really amazing, though? There's a place that we fished down in Point Sal.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you're there, when you ain't supposed to be there, boats, these little boats show up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
So you're talking about under rocks.
Yeah.
Where does these little boats show up from?
I've heard some other stories about Point Sal.
I mean, in your
lights underwater.
and you tow. I mean, and there's this one area there we used to tow, and things just didn't look correct.
Mm-hmm.
It looked correct from a distance, but when you were close, it didn't look correct.
Mm.
But all these boats would show up when you were in the wrong spot at the right time.
Yeah.
And I always wondered where they come from.
Yeah. Have you seen anything else strange in your experiences?
I seen one time offshore. It looked like a ship that was upside down.
Mm-hmm.
It disappeared.
Yeah.
And I reported it.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happened about it.
Mm. Nobody came out there looking.
No one ever come out to
No,
take a
not
look.
person.
And it was the oddest thing.
Yeah.
I don't know what I seen is if I was supposed to see it or not, but
It
was
down
weird.
near Sal.
it was off of Arguello
Oh, well.
when we were towing offshore.
Mm.
It's
It's a different place, isn't it?
yes, it is.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to say what's happening
Mm-hmm.
because we think we know what's going on, but we don't. It's just a big guessing game. No, I'm just lucky, I guess, to be here.
Yeah.
And fortunate enough to be here in this town. All I know is I have a lot of friends that are from the valley.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the best expressions that I've heard
Yeah.
is our worst day is the valley's best days.
Amen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of truth in that.
And And I keep hearing that, and I even heard it this morning.
Yeah.
You know, this morning was a little bit cold and a little bit brisk.
Uh-huh.
And there was a man that just come from Wasco. He just sold his ranch over there.
Mhm.
He says, our bad day right here is back home's best day.
Mhm.
Or is better than their best day.
By the way, I thought yesterday was one of your best days out here.
Well, yesterday with us for the
Yesterday.
barbecue.
Yeah, and the blessing of the fleet.
Yeah,
and all.
blessing of the fleet at all.
I hope that signals a big change, you know, turning of a page here maybe.
Well, if all the people have to do is, if they would just bring up, I don't know if you remember it, when you were a little boy, that used to be televised on Channel 6. They used to televise that, the blessing of the fleet in San Pedro. And the fishermen went all out for that.
Yeah.
They went all out big time with the first seiners, and they'd line up and they'd have a regular big parade for the blessing of the fleet.
Yeah.
And maybe if the people just, if they're really interested in it, if they just call into like, I would say Channel 6 or some of the, you know, NBC, ABC or whatever, go back in the archives and pull out some of that old film from back in 1954,
Yeah.
55, 56, 53.
Yeah.
There was a big procession then. Did anybody see anything on the news last night about?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
channel?
It was on KSBY.
I missed it.
It was on at 11 o'clock. I
You gotta
I
go.
wished I
Yeah,
wished I had
Taped it.
taped it. Yeah.
Was it any good? Was it pretty good?
Yeah, it was pretty good. Yeah. And they got some.
Is there anything else we missed?
They got some
or-
footage of
That was
the
good.
actual, you know,
Thanks.
ceremony itself.
Well, you're very welcome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to get going.
I was surprised when it
We'll
when
see you
they
later.
took the roses right here.
Oh.
They should have had a camera on the end of this dock.
What did they do?
Right here. They come by us, they blessed us and this boat's
Yeah.
along.
Yeah.
And they went right on up. And so everybody got ready to go down there. And went back on the stern just for, and I started looking. And they were right there on the other side of the dock.
Yeah.
And everybody was standing on the bow of the boat. And I wonder what they're doing, because I didn't pay too much attention. All of a sudden, I looked at the Coast Guard cutter sitting there maneuvering, just kind of holding position.
Yeah.
And I see a rose go floating by. And
Oh.
what in the world? And pretty soon there's more on both sides. And the people on the bow are throwing them kind of one at a time.
Yeah.
And I think it was one for each name
Oh, on the
Right.
memorial.
on the memorial.
Right.
Yeah.
Steve was
Really
aboard.
good.
Actually, I've got all that.
Is that
Nancy's at home editing that right now.
It-
We're gonna have a
is-
half-hour show on 54.
is that right?
Yeah.
Is that what it
I
was
was on the
for?
boat with them.
Yeah.
actually. I
Was
picked
it
off the
was it
side.
like one rose for each person? That,
Right.
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, that really. Then when I seen it, it just sent a cold chill. You know.
Sure.
God.
I
That
thought
was-
it was
And they
really
were talking about all of the names that are on there and
Uh-huh.
things like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Well, thank you. And
Yeah.
I guess you know, if you take just a couple more minutes and tell us a little bit about
What do you want? to
About the boat and
But
the gear.
Did you want me to sign something or
Yes,
something?
I do. Thank you for remembering.
So.
Okay, we're just waiting for Steve. He's looking at the gear inside that we were talking about. So do you actually
No, I fished this. Hopefully I can keep fishing it. And then before I used to, I fished herring too. Herring for me is in the December. We spend about 2 weeks in San Francisco fishing herring. And then it's Stenson, except the little bitty squares, but the big. It's Japanese. It's a Japanese.
What's the size of the net that's there now?
This here is 7, 8.5. It's really funny. They made 8.5 inch of mandatory about 15 years ago. And I was using 8.5 inch in the mid-70s because I thought that it was better for the fishery. But it was trammel gear. It was nylon. This here is monofilament. This is something that I'm really, it's easy. But this monofilament gear made it to where anybody, I could go up here and pick anybody off the street and bring them down and they could be coming out. But with trammel gear, you have to know and you start from the bottom. Because there's so much repair work that does. This stuff here, none of them ever repair it. They just throw it away and buy new because it's so cheap. So anybody off the street can fish it. And trammel gear though is so expensive you have to do it and take care of it. I always liked it. In fact, I still have some trammel. But I don't know about it, if it's going to be useful anymore now. Anyway.
This net here you just built.
I just built it.
Built that based on a recommendation you got from Fishery last fall.
That they weren't gonna bother us here in the area between Sal and Yankee Point. And then they reneged on it.
That's at 30 fathoms.
Is that how we're supposed to, is that the type of, are we, now they wonder why we always question authority. Well, when you have a few of those things, those type of things come down around your neck, you kind of wonder, are they really telling you the truth when they ever say so? So, oh yeah, that's no problem, not a problem. You take that as, is it truthful or not?
Well, based on
lost
that,
all faith in any government, even the state. Thought I had more faith in the state. Can't trust them. I mean, there's so many times you go over and over and over again, and we're like the Native Americans. Here, I'll put you in Oklahoma. Really nice place. Oh, okay. Oops. They found some oil there. Well, we'll move you to the Badlands of New Mexico or someplace. I don't know. You can't trust it. There's no. It's gotten to the point to where the average person just can't have trust in the government. At least I don't.
Based on what they told you last October, how much do you have invested here in this net? Approximately.
Well, just in the material. Well, I couldn't say. There's probably 3. Well, see, when I bought this, I bought nothing. So, like I said, so I bought 12, 14 pieces, and 50-some dollars each piece. $52. This is the bigger stuff. The green is heavier material. That's a little bit more. It's like $52 or $53 per piece. Like 14 pieces.
Well, that's just the basic components, and you have to assemble all those
Well,
pieces.
no. That's just the web. Then you gotta have the line. You gotta have the leads, the floats, and it takes about 4 pounds of twine. Well, now maybe 6 pounds of twine to hang the float, the port line, lead line. And then of course then the time.
now you may not be able to use this piece.
Yeah, if they have what if something doesn't happen to curtail the way they want it to go,
And are they offering to pay you for your time and material here?
oh, absolutely. No, they make it so that here's how they get off the hook. They didn't say where you can't do it. They say we're moving you out to 60 fathoms. Moving us out to 60 fathoms has about the same profitability as telling a guy with a dump truck that he can drive his truck, do everything with it, but he can only carry 4 shovelfuls of dirt in the truck and 4 shovelfuls in the back. Not saying you can't do it, but that's all you can carry. But you can just, but we want your license, we want the road tax, we want the fuel tax, but you, instead of carrying 20 cubic yards in each one of them, or 10 cubic yards in each one, we're not telling you can't do it. You can only carry 4 shovelfuls each. And that's little shovels, not scoop shovels.
Besides the economics of it, is it safe for you to fish at 60 fathoms and hook the size? No, it's not safe.
Not at all. No, they stuck us outside of the realm of safety out there. Yeah, we're on the edge of what we can stand right now. About 180 feet, 300 feet. And there's a lot of places where we can't even fish there. There's a lot more shallower grounds along here. A lot more.
Wide shelf.
Yes. You get outside the 60 fathoms, there's not much. It's a lot of rock formation. So you're cutting out.
Plus you're away from headlands where you're
Oh yeah, where you have a little protection. Yeah, you're right out in the worst part of it, in the possibly worst part of it. Yeah. And but it doesn't seem to matter to anybody other than people that are doing it.
But they still allow you to fish.
Oh yeah. But then and they still want my. I pay almost $1,100 for fees for different permits. Plus, this here fee is $330 a year. And but you know, they would really. I suspected that if we did finally just fold up, they'd probably find some way to make us still buy donut permits. Even though we can't use it.
Well, in the case that they might allow you back in and you don't purchase it, then you wouldn't qualify.
You've lost. Yeah, it's sad. It really is. And I don't know any other way. We tried to see. My brother Eddie was talking about the clean fishery that they had, and they did too. I mean, they did everything to the letter that they wanted. I mean, they made a beautiful fishery out of it. And the only thing they said was, you caught too much. So the bill that we're trying to push through now is the same thing primarily, except for smaller areas. And this time, there is a per boat quota. And that in itself can be regulated. And that way, you have your quota, your permit. You know, but Patty Wolf, one of her things was when that came up was her word right out of her mouth. Been there and done that. That was her words to Eric. He says, well, what about what's coming up on the crawfishing? And she says, been there and done that. He says, have you looked at it yet? Well, it's a trawl bill, isn't it? He says, yeah, but have you looked at it? done that. He says, no, you haven't. You haven't even looked at it, have you? He says, did you read the provisions in it for each boat has a quota and when it's filled? It almost makes you want to scream. If you just wish that the screams would fall on other than their ears.
I think the gods have spoken.
That means I go out and put a for sale sign on the boat. It's sad. It's terrible. It is. There's no rhyme or reason for it. If there was, then hey ho, they've got a legitimate crime. But when they don't, and they won't even, like Eric said, did you look at them? No. We just don't want it. Well, wait a minute. Look at it first.
What I've seen, Dickie, is they can't find a reason. They just make one. It's that simple. You don't need a reason. Right? 2 cents a day.
Yeah, it's true.
It's not a
Well, how do we have people like that in? How do people like that, I'm not saying heartless people, but just uneducated people get into a position where they think